And the midterm elections are less than 10 months away, and 29 House Democrats have already decided to drop out of the race. Let's take a look at some of the possibilities as to why. On Tuesday, Congressman Jim Cooper became the 29th House Democrat to announce he's not seeking re-election. In contrast, only 14 House Republicans have decided not to run again this year, and the GOP only needs to flip 5 seats to win the majority. Election analyst John Fortier said that there are 2 main reasons that so many Democrats have quit the race, and redistricting is only one of them.
I think the bigger reason is that they anticipate that there's a very good chance that they will lose the majority control of the House of Representatives. And historical precedent is that the party out of the White House wins a good number of seats. And especially with Joe Biden with low popularity and the economy somewhat shaky, it doesn't look like a good year for Democrats. And most of them know that they will likely be in the minority.
In this midterm election, Democrats are defending both chambers of Congress. And in the Senate, 34 out of 100 seats are being contested. Right now, Democrats have only a slim majority in the Senate with a tie-breaking vote from the vice president.
That is more of a race-by-race dynamic where we'll look at how each candidate is doing in just a few places in 6 or 7 states and races. So we'll have to see. But again, the trend will be good for Republicans. And with only 1 seat needed, there's a very good chance they will take the Senate as well as the House.
Fortier went on to predict that the Senate races in Georgia and Arizona will be very competitive, as Democrats won them narrowly in the last election. And even if the GOP were only to gain control of the House, it would still be very difficult for President Biden to push forward his agenda. But Fortier went on to say that the midterm election results don't necessarily predict what will happen 2 years later. The state of Virginia has been getting some attention as of late. With the recently inaugurated Governor Glenn Youngkin, he's taken some bold action to crack down on critical race theory as well as mask and vaccine mandates. We're happy to have Virginia Congressman Bob Good here with us to assess. Congressman Bob Good, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Glad to be with you, Steve. Thanks for having me again.
Now, Congressman, your state, Virginia, has just elected a new governor, Glenn Youngkin. He's come out of the gate running by sticking to a lot of his campaign promises, undoing mandates, banning critical race theory and such. Congressman, you represent Virginia's 5th district. You've been very outspoken about critical race theory. What's the temperature like in Virginia right now?
It's exciting to see a governor doing what he said he would do. We're proud of the way he has started out in these first couple of weeks, and we're proud of the action that he's taking to protect our students. He ran on many education issues, and we've, of course, emphasized that as well during our first year here. And so I'm proud that he's standing up against critical race theory. As you know, that is a dangerous ideology that indoctrinates our kids with a leftist, racist mindset, and it tries to frame dishonestly who we are as a country. It's dishonest about the progress that we've made, and it's dishonest about how kids are limited or advantaged based on the race.
Now, I mean, on the issue of critical race theory, Governor Youngkin has set up a hotline to report things that have these elements in them that are being taught in the schools. These ideologies, like you mentioned, they're certainly elusive and can masquerade themselves. What do you make of this step that he's taken?
I think it's courageous on his part. You can tell a lot by how well you're doing, by the enemies that you have and the attacks that you're taking. And of course, the left and the media are going crazy over him doing this. But parents and kids obviously on the front line, and parents supporting them are the ones who know what's happening in the schools, and they're the ones who need to report, frankly, violations of the policies of the new administration if they're doing that in the school systems. They pointed to Governor Northam for support for the wrong kind of ideology that was going on in our schools. We have a bill, as you know, that we've introduced that says that teaching of critical race theory or those kind of teachings that would separate kids or discriminate kids based on their race is a violation of their civil rights. And certainly it is to treat people differently based on race is a violation of civil rights. And I think they ought to report it to the hotline the governor has set up, and I'm proud and glad that he's done that.
Now, Congressman, we're seeing major countries around the world end the mask mandates, ending the vaccine mandates on a national level. Ireland, England, now we're seeing Belgium. Why do you think we're seeing pushback in the U.S. on a state and local level when mandates are rolled back? And has this issue, in your opinion, become too politicized?
It certainly has, but what we have been saying, many of us on the conservative side, many of us on the truth-telling side, what we've been saying for 2 years is increasingly being validated, that the government response in so many ways to the virus was not justified. And you're seeing that now when it comes to the mask mandates, the way it's being handled increasingly across the country. We even had a doctor on CNN say that it was just face decoration to wear these cloth masks that we've been forced upon our children. But to think about what we've done to our children, especially these first 2 years, we have sacrificed children in favor of teachers and teachers' unions. And the damage that we've done to children over these past 2 years is incalculable. The learning loss, as well as the social development, the academic development that's happened. So glad to see our governor pushing back and standing up against that. But to your question specifically, there's so many people, Steve, who are invested in what's happened over these last 2 years that, of course, there's great hesitation to acknowledge or to recognize that we've done the wrong thing. But I think history will judge us harshly with what we've done in the name of this virus and the way that, particularly, that we've handled it for our children.
Congressman Bob Good, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Great to be with you.
Today marks the 77th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz concentration camp. Members of Congress tweeted messages in memory of the Holocaust and in commemoration of those victims. Nazi Germany designated Auschwitz as one among a network of camps for killing Jews. The Nazis had killed at least 6 million people, primarily Jews from across Europe. Congressman David Rouser of North Carolina sent a message saying, quote, "We must vow to never forget and never let these atrocities happen again." Other members of Congress sent similar messages, reminding us of the atrocities and danger of anti-Semitism. In the United States Holocaust Museum is also commemorating International Holocaust Remembrance Day. The Holocaust Museum website emphasizes that these historical lessons are still relevant today, given the recent violence at a Texas synagogue and anti-Semitism in other parts of the world. In a short film at the museum's website, survivors reflect on the killings and extreme suffering of the Jewish people during the Holocaust. The film honors those who risked their lives to rescue persecuted Jews. Tina Strobos, who worked with her mother to save 100 Jewish refugees, explains why she took the risk.
Why did the rescuers do it? My mother said to me, we can get killed, but even if it's the last thing you do, you have to do that, because you can't live with that injustice and not do anything, and then live with yourself.
An award-winning film is bringing viewers to tears across the country. It captured the story of a jaded American reporter and a team of innocent students as they risk everything to expose the Chinese Communist Party's deadly propaganda. The movie is based on true events. A student from a top university in China practices Falun Gong, a spiritual meditation discipline which adheres to the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. But overnight he finds himself an enemy of the state. That's after Beijing launched a national suppression campaign against the practice. The student met an American reporter struggling to find his meaning in his profession. Together they're faced with a choice: to tell the truth, risk their lives, or stay silent. In Delaware, State Senator Dave Lawson gave his take on the film.
Shocked, amazed, certainly felt that I was way behind in what was going on when this started in 1999, and now 23 years later, this is now just coming out. I'm embarrassed I didn't know more.
Another audience member says that even though the movie made him sad about human rights abuses happening in China,
I think it was also the mission of the film is to make you feel somewhat hopeful that there is redemption, that at the end of the day there is some hope if we fight for what's right.
The movie is premiering in cities all over the country, including New York, Washington, D.C., and California. As we reported to you earlier this week, the U.S. has seen a record number of apprehensions at the southern border, with record seizures of the deadly drug fentanyl. Earlier, we spoke with former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott. Rodney Scott, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Thank you for allowing me to be here today.
Now, Rodney, as former chief of the Border Patrol until just a few months ago, you probably have the deepest understanding of this border crisis, and we're really happy to have you on to get your perspective. Now, We hear a lot about the numbers of illegals flooding the border, and we've seen the images from time to time. So I want to ask you, is it real, and is it a crisis?
Yeah, it is real, and it is a crisis, and I encourage people to look beyond just the illegal immigration aspect. That in itself is a crisis, the numbers pouring across the border. But this is a policy-created crisis, and the cartels are using those large numbers of illegal aliens coming across the border, not just to make money on the illegal alien smuggling, but to create controllable gaps in border security. They simply overwhelm agents with those massive numbers. And that creates other areas where there's no law enforcement at all, and that's where they're bringing the narcotics, the criminal aliens, the people that want to avoid arrest for whatever reason, and they're just pouring across at will. This is a crisis, and it is real.
Now, there's some data that's just come in that there's been a huge spike of people coming through the border from countries other than Mexico and some of those other Central American countries that are close by. Can you tell us if there were people passing through from other countries during your time?
Yeah, and that's another misnomer. The southwest border sees everything. So law enforcement on the southwest border, specifically Customs and Border Protection, they routinely arrest people from around the world. And again, traditionally the numbers weren't as high, but in the last few years, we've seen arrests from countries other than Mexico surpass the traditional arrests from Mexico. And before I retired last August, we'd arrested people from 150 different countries from around the world, to include many of those that sponsor or are known to sponsor and support terrorism. You just can't have an open border like that and then try to fool yourself into thinking we have any level of safety or security. It's not just about economic migrants. It's a real threat to the United States.
Now, another report that just came in showed that fentanyl, the drug that's killing millions of people around the world, seizures are up over 1,000% along the border in Texas. Why do you think that is?
Well, I need you to think about that a little bit too. So those seizures are up dramatically at a time where actual patrol enforcement on the border is at all-time low. Especially in Texas, the Border Patrol is completely overwhelmed with this migration issue. And there's large sections of border that have gone completely unmanned. Texas DPS has stepped in and Texas National Guard to try to help out. But with all that going on, we're still seeing record seizures. But people need to understand a lot is getting away. Last year, there were documented over 400,000 incidents with evidence-based documentation by U.S. Border Patrol that people got away. And we have no idea what they had with them. But when the cartels see that type of an environment, they see it as, hey, now's the time to go. So those record seizures are great in one aspect, but they're telling us that we have a very open, porous border on another, because those seizures are not affecting the price of narcotics on the street at all.
Now, if there's anybody who's going to know how to fix this problem, I think it's going to be the guy who's been on the front lines and understands the intricacies of the situation. So with that said, is this border crisis solvable, and what are the solutions from your perspective?
It is solvable, and I think we proved that in the last administration. To give the last administration a lot of credit, what they really did was go to the border security experts and ask them, hey, what should we do? And then they followed up on it. So programs simple like Remain in Mexico, the migrant protection protocols that prevent people from being released into the United States before a judge adjudicates their case are critical. That made a huge difference in the immigration. But that border wall construction was making every single Border Patrol agent more effective on the border. They could simply cover a larger area. It was a smart wall. No one wants to talk about that, but it involved technology that was helping the agents to respond in a smarter way, not just respond. Putting those two pieces back in place, along with a few other things like the cooperative agreements with El Salvador and Guatemala, could turn this around overnight. Unfortunately, this last year, those 2 million plus illegal alien arrests, it's just an indication of how many actually made it into the country. And this administration has been releasing people into this nation at a level I've never seen before. It's going to take us a while to recover from that. But we could secure the border with simple policy decisions and acting on what Congress has already appropriated to build that smart border wall system and make the agents more effective and really just secure America just like you'd like to do your home.
Former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, thank you.
Thank you for having me on today. I really appreciate it.